How's it going, man?
Hey, how you doing, Rob?
I'm
What's
doing
up?
good. It's good to finally get a chance to chat you up. Um, so for anybody part of my channel, it's been a minute since I've done a live interview conversation with anybody, but it's mainly because I've got such a low tech setup. I really got to invest in some like nicer equipment and stuff like that. But I've been working with David here. He's got a comic series that he made, and I always like to take the opportunity to show people independent works. And why not? We don't all need to look at Marvel and DC images. Look at something unique and new. So, how you doing? Good.
Oh, I'm good. Hey, I appreciate you taking the time to. I know I sent you the book a couple weeks ago or something like that. I mean, I just got the book printed back in mid January. I had a couple technical issues with the printing process, which were that was all my fault. But I use Comic Wellspring to
Yeah,
do my Primal Strike comic book, and pretty much I was happy with the service.
yeah,
Pretty good service. You had told me that that's what you had used, so I had a little bit of problem with them. For one, I didn't spell check very well when I. That's kind of advice I would give somebody when you're doing your first comic book. Uh, look it over, or even have somebody else look it over.
right.
Look it over 10 times if
Yeah,
you have to before you send it in, because I misspelled like 3 words because I was kind of rushing at the end to kind of do the lettering,
yeah.
and I probably should have paid somebody to do the lettering, but that was kind of the holdup. I was trying to get the book done by the end of 2024, but it just didn't work out that way. But hey, I appreciate you taking the time
Yeah,
to even look at it, man. You know.
yeah. I definitely agree with the getting somebody else to look at it because every book that I've done, graphic novel that I've got him perfect, and then you get him in hand. I'm like, misspell, misspell, misspell. Like it just suddenly crop up. So just
Because you get it in your head that you think something looks right, but you really need to look at it with because you've been thinking about the book for so long
yeah,
that you get that what do they call it, the 40-yard stare. I forget what they call it, but when you just look at it so long that you really need to take. I probably should have taken like 2 or 3 days and then sat back down and just went over it again. And the only reason I found one of the spelling errors because I'm an idiot. But one of the reasons I found it is because they sent it back like in a text, like in a PDF format,
yeah,
and I got to see it, and I was and it just kind of stuck out at me. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
anyway, I'm not gonna go on about my failures of the lettering process, but
It's a learning,
I'm probably gonna hire a letterer maybe in the future.
yeah, it's a learning process for us all. But so how long have you been reading? As far as your interest in comics and stuff like that, how long have you been reading comics? Like, when did you? How did you get started?
Well, I started reading comic, but I'm 55 years old, so I started reading comic books in like 1975, a long time ago,
Yeah,
and I started actually kind of understanding that this is kind of a hobby. Around 1976, 1977, when I met some other kids that were into comics, but it was all about Marvel comics. My kind of go into the story. My mom hated to bring me along when I was a little brat because I was a brat when I was a kid. I mean, I was terrible. I was oh boy. She would go to auctions like on the edge of town, the small little town I grew up in. There were auctions like on weekends, and she didn't want to bring me because I went one time and I was just like a holy terror, bored like crazy. So she would have the older neighbor kid. She'd give him a couple bucks, and he would come over and sit with me my front yard on a lawn chair, and he would bring a stack of comic books, and that's the first time I was introduced to like Fantastic Four, and they were all beat up,
yeah,
ripped up and beat up. But he would, I'm 6 years old, and yeah, he's like 14, and I know he wanted to be somewhere else, but she would give him a couple bucks to sit with me, and that's the first time I saw Fantastic Four. It was Fantastic Four number 86, Jack Kirby, Stan Lee, Doctor Doom, and once I saw that, I was hooked. He had an old Iron Man. I just remember stupid stuff. He was fighting Firebrand, a villain called Firebrand.
Yeah.
It was Spider-Man against the Tarantula and the Jackal. I mean, I got into, it was like around 1974, 1975. So
Yeah.
then I started going to the grocery store with my mom the following year. I'm about 7 years old. And Mom, she would go shop, she would do the grocery shopping, and I would stand by the spinner rack and just look through every one that I could. And it was all Marvel. I didn't like DC at all. I mean, I had 4 friends in my neighborhood. You would get teased and picked on if you liked DC. Like, it wasn't cool to like Batman. Now, the Superman movie came along in 78, 79. And I remember I saw it in New Year's Day, 1979. And for a little while, like, it was kind of cool to like Superman. But Batman, like, a kid wore a Batman shirt to school, like in elementary school. We all like beat him up and stuff, It was not cool to like Batman. Like, I tell people this that are a lot younger than me, and they're like, "Oh no, Batman's awesome, so popular. That's DC's flagship character." Not back in the day, it wasn't.
Right.
Back in the day, it's like you kind of kept it on the download of like comic books anyway. It wasn't like today when you can flaunt comic book stuff, and if they saw you liking comic books, you might want to keep that on the down low.
Yeah.
That's kind of what. And I just love those old 70s Bronze Age comic books, and into the 80s. I kind of lost interest late 80s. Started, I could see kind of the commercialization of it happening a little bit, and that kind of turned me off a little bit.
Yeah.
It just didn't seem I don't know. It just started to get, and I kind of missed out on the Image stuff, and I kind of regret. I knew what was going on because I watched the Dennis Miller show. I saw Rob Liefeld on there.
Yep.
I knew who all those guys were, but Todd McFarlane. But I wasn't into that stuff until like the mid 90s when I kind of got back into comic books. But I thought when I was in high school that I was going to go to Manhattan and I was going to work at the Marvel bullpen. That was my dream. Of course, you have to have talent, so that kind of shot the dream. This is kind of weird because all the people that you normally have that you talk to, they're all artists, and I'm like the first guy that just wanted to make a comic book with very little talent. I don't have I have a very little bit of artistic talent, very little. I thought I was a little bit. My mom told me how good I was when I was a kid, drawing, basically tracing John Byrne stuff from Alpha Flight and X-Men.
Yeah.
She's like, "Oh, that's so good." And I didn't have the heart to tell her. No, I just traced that picture of Vindicator or whatever it is. And she thought I was actually drawing that stuff.
Yeah.
It's pretty embarrassing. But,
I mean, a creative person doesn't have to be able to draw. You just have to have the idea in your head and want to bring it to life, which is what you've done. So it's just
yeah. I mean, I've always had a pretty good imagination, but the other parts of it, I really couldn't. My buddy and I drew a comic book we made a comic book, we laminated it and everything. It was really low. Like you talk about your early stuff. Your stuff would have been like on the shrine of comic book Hall of Fame compared to the stuff that my buddy and I did when we were like freshmen in high school.
Yeah.
We did we were all into Power Man and Iron Fist. That was the cool thing. Like around 1983, I was really into that comic book. And so we did a spinoff called Cougar and Hammer Fist. That was the comic book we made. It was terrible. I wish I still had a copy of it. But so this isn't actually my first comic book, but the other one was like we drew it and colored it, and it was pretty. It was only like 14, 15 pages, something like that. But we laminated it. We thought we were a big deal, but yeah.
That's still pretty good. I mention all the time on my channel, like, all these guys that talk about the thing they're going to make, and they made 2 pages in 2 years, So for you guys to create anything that's, what, 14, 15 pages, I mean, that's not nothing,
Well, the first video that I saw of yours, I think I had mentioned this in the past, was the metal shade with Isaac Bell. That's how it just came up on the algorithm in my recommendation, and I was like, I'll click on this. That kind of sounds interesting. And it was you talking about that comic book. That was the very first video. So I made a little comment. So I got on their website and I ordered it, right? He's got his own, I forget the name of the website, but him and his girlfriend or whatever anyway, you responded right away in the comment section, and I think you had a couple hundred subscribers maybe at the time.
To respond at that time, because I didn't have that many.
Yeah, now you don't have time to understand, and now you're like, I'm too good for these petty comments. We don't. No, I'm just kidding with you, but what I mean. You were like you were like responded in like 20, 30 minutes, or something like that, maybe an hour or two, whatever. Doesn't matter. But I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Subscribe, and that's when I started watching your stuff. And then maybe a week later, you started showing your masters in stuff.
Right.
And I said, well, let's try to get our hands on a copy. And I told I have a Discord, which isn't comic book guys. I do have a comic book section in there that we kind of bash the newer comic books because I don't like the fact it pains me to see the condition Marvel comics are in. It really does.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I'm any better. I'm just saying, the independent comics are much more interesting than the commercialization of the Marvel character. All the covers are pinups and all that stuff. But anyway, I saw your masters in. Not to get off subject, I saw your masters in, and I was like, dude, you're a loser. You've always wanted to make a comic book. Make one. You know what I mean? So I started going on walks after work. And when I was a kid, like doing my paper route and stuff like that, I'd always visualize like comic book panels in my head while I'm walking just because I'm bored, So I'd walk real late at night when I get off work. And I just start I said, I'm going to come up with a story. And before I ever saw your channel, I was working on like a silly G.I. Joe parody that was going to be with action figures on a green screen that I was actually filming. And I got the first episode like halfway edited. And we have a local pond over here. I live right on a park, like right by a park. And I took the little boats over with the action figures and I filmed it on the water. I mean, these people are walking by thinking, what is this 50-year-old man freaking doing with his GoPro out there filming stupid crap,
Fun.
Yeah, I mean, this is the silly stuff I do, Wonder why my wife left me, really. But anyway, so, I had that before I even saw any of your stuff. And then I saw your masters in and I was like, oh, I'm going to put this on hold. I'm going to do a comic book. So and when I got the Metal Shade comic book, I was like, man, that's so offbeat. That is so kind of out there.
Yeah.
That team of crazy characters, that he come up with the Metal Shade. I just thought that was the coolest thing.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of people are doing street level stuff, and street level stuff's cool. But I'm getting kind of tired of the same old dark, dystopian, street level vigilante stuff. And I said, I want to do something cartoonish. I want to do something that reminds me of like an 80s or a 90s animated thing. So I started looking for artists that had that style. And I thought I had one guy, but he would never respond back to me. He responded back to me one time, so he missed out on getting hired because he had the style I was looking for. And then I stumbled across another guy that really had the style. He matched up about 90% of what I was looking for. And his name is Rafael Salas from Brazil.
Yeah.
And talented guy. I follow him on Instagram now. But he kind of looked at my thing. I sent him like a big. I sent him kind of an overview of my plot, the breakdown of kind of what the characters were. Nothing super detailed. I didn't send him any dialogue that I had written. Thank God, or he would have ran. But he probably would have blocked me. But he said, I think I know what you're going for, and I think I can make it work. And the first 4 or 5 pages that I sent him, because I would draw the page on my thing here, my display tablet badly, and he would transform it. You know what I mean? And the first 5 pages, he made a little comment to me when he got back to me. It was like, is there any action in this book? And I was like, I better get into it. So I changed some of the story as I went on, kind of on the fly, of because I had a little bit more detailed, like a little detailed backstory. And I said, I don't want to waste this guy's time because this guy could bail on me at any time. I'm paying him per page. So
sure.
Let's just do something and get a plot going and get some action going, some silly. And then he was finally like, oh, okay. Now I'm having fun. And I want the guy to have fun when he's drawing my stuff. Of course, I'm paying him, but,
yeah.
I want him to have a little bit of fun. So, but I storyboarded everything. I handcuffed him. I probably should have just given him the plot, a little bit more dialogue, and let him. But it's hard to do it when it's your characters.
Yeah.
And I don't know this guy. I'm not friends with him. I don't have a rapport with him. But I'm just but I think he did a decent job, as much as I handcuffed him on, there's limitations here. I wanted it to look like how I wanted my page to look. He changed a few things, but he always ran it by me first.
Sure.
But he didn't really understand the characters that much. It's like, what's this silly frog that's got these photon guns and named after an old cowgirl? It's like, this is where my head was at, man. I was trying to be different. I was trying to come up with something different, so.
Are you using the same artist on the next issue, or have you even worked that out?
I'm starting the cover. I'm starting the cover, and I'm probably going to have him draw the cover. But I'll be honest, I've had some financial stuff go on in the last 6 months. This comic would have been done earlier if my house hadn't got hit by a tornado in mid comic book, which, $55,000 worth of damage. And my mom passed away like 2 months before the comic book. So I'm paying this guy a decent amount. I come out of my own pocket for this whole thing. So, I mean, I'm not complaining. I've got the money, but I don't have kids, and I've got some disposable income, and, I'm not married. So, it's like, I'm going to put a little investment in this, but I may have to go with someone, I hate to say this, but I may have to be a little bit more, I may have to go with someone a little cheaper on the second issue, but I'm going to have him do the cover at least, so maybe I can work something out with him. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't want to do it. I don't know. Yeah. He seemed a little relieved when it was over. Let's put it that way. Excuse me.
About it differently, but I know a guy who might fit really well. Just something we could talk about separately.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. He draws animal creatures really, really well, and so I don't know. We could talk about that separately. I've just got my
yeah. We don't have to get into that, but yeah, I hear you.
Just a random thought. So everything you say, I kind of like. I can identify with it. Where you're like, I have this idea, and it's constantly in my head. And when you have a moment, you're just thinking about it, and you're just building the story, and you're thinking about these things. And it doesn't leave your head, and then you just want like you just sounds like you're just like, I'm gonna make it. Let's just make it. And there you go.
That's kind of where I was. I had a lot of fun doing it. Don't get me wrong. I had a lot of fun doing it, and people might look at the end result and say, "You didn't really put that much." You know what I mean? But to me, it was a lot of work because I've never tried anything like that before on that scale. I would love to have done like 80 pages. For one, I couldn't afford it. Two, I just didn't have that kind of time.
Sure.
You know what I mean? But I've got like 3 issues plotted. I could have easily done 100 pages.
Yeah.
I've got. You really can't do on issue 1 when it's your new crazy stuff. You can't go deep into. I wanted to just keep it kind of silly, and you would probably call it cliche or whatever. I'm a little bit better. I can write a little better than that. I can write more serious, but I just wanted to get it. I was planning on, if I do other issues, getting a little deeper into the character creation, and there's some twists and turns coming, stuff like that. So, but on the first issue, you can't go into all that. You just kind of gotta throw it out there and see, just to get it, like you say, just get it done, and then you can build on it.
Yeah, if there's one thing I've learned and heard a lot of professionals and independent guys say is that harder than issue 1 because you got a limited amount of space to introduce enough stuff to hook people, but you want to tell a lot of stories, but you don't want to bore people, so to speak.
Right.
Throw in some fun, and you've got 20 something pages if you're doing kind of standard comic size. So it's a tricky. An issue 1 is a tricky one. Like no doubt.
It's real tricky.
Yeah.
Like your books have so many. You can kind of have for one, those characters, even though you're handling those characters differently, like also in a more, in my opinion, a more fun, but also mature.
Yeah.
You kind of way, but those characters are kind of known to people.
Oh yeah.
You can kind of, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, and you're in control. I mean, I'm so envious. If I could draw like you, man, I could tell a much better tale. My being fully in control of it. It's weird putting it. I remember the day I sent him the pitch. I sent him all my characters. I sometimes I'll show you sometime in the future. I'll show you like my cover that I made. It ended up being it's going to be backwards here, but it ended up being this. I actually drew. Oh boy, yeah. I actually. You'll laugh when you see You'll laugh when you see my version of it. You'll be like, oh boy, I mean, it looked like a 9-year-older did it basically. So I mean, but that's what got me excited when I saw that, because this is the very first image he ever did. I had him start with the cover, and I got excited because I love the cover. I thought it turned out really well. I thought he outdid. He changed like the positioning of the characters some, but he nailed what I was going for on that cover. So, it's just but I was almost embarrassed. The pitch to him, I was like, oh, he's not gonna like this at all. He's gonna hate this. He's gonna think, well, why am I wasting my time with this guy? You know what I mean? Because you get on, there's so many independent comic books now. Just go on all those sites and look. And some of them you're like, hey, but there's some really talented dudes out there that have some really cool ideas.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I was a little intimidated, like maybe I shouldn't put all this money into this thing, and I was like, I had already ran my mouth on my Discord to some of my friends, And they were like, "Oh, you're never going to make a comic book. You're not going to do this." So I started showing them some of my rough sketches, and I would take like a week and a half. I had this stuff made for like 4 months before I even hired the artist.
Right.
4 or 5 months I had been working on this, like rough, my rough layouts and my character designs. So I kind of already was in for that much. I had already ran my mouth. I put, and I was, and my friend was like, "You need to put your money where your mouth is. You're bashing Marvel Comics all the time." And I'm like, "I'm not bashing Marvel Comics. I'm bashing. I love Marvel Comics. I want to see Marvel Comics great, But the people that they're hiring right now to write and make some of this stuff, they don't care about these characters. See, when I look at your Masters and stuff, I'm not saying that you think that He-Man is the greatest thing ever, but I can tell you don't have contempt
Right.
for these characters. These Marvel writers, some of the new ones, not all of them, you can tell they have some contempt for what they're writing. You know what I mean? It's like a resume thing that they're just trying to pad. It seems to me that's what it comes across.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And when I read your Masters in stuff, I could tell that you got a place in your heart for these characters, and I mean, I know you love comic books in general, but there's no contempt there for the subject matter.
Yeah.
And that right there, that's like a huge bonus.
Yeah.
If you got a guy that has got talent and loves what the characters, you can tell some of these new Marvel writers, they could care less about these characters. It comes across when they're making these books. So like some of that new Fantastic Four is just you know what I mean? It's like, oh God, how are you doing this to these beloved? This is Marvel's flagship stuff. But I don't mean to go on a rant about that. You knew I was going to do it. You knew I was going to do this. So go ahead.
The comic industry is not anything like it used to be, and I've been saying for a while, it seems to me like the really interesting will be independent people making their own, because with social media, you can build your own audience, places you can comics, you can make the stuff and get it out to people's hands, and you could get like a unique thing you would never get anywhere else, which is kind of why I did my own thing, like a fan comic on He-Man. Like, why did I do that? But I just had a story I had to tell, and
plus you can tell you love it. I mean, you can tell this is it. That stuff interests you.
Yeah. And it's like Isaac Bell, like we were talking about with his Metal Shade, like he just built his audience on his own on websites for several years. And he created his own book, his own dynamic art style and designs, and he put it out there and make a living in his own books. But that's I think that's the future of comics.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Doing their own thing.
Yeah, they're not leaving. These guys getting hired, and I know Marvel's not paying. There's a big thing going around right now. Marvel's not paying what they should.
Yep.
But the people coming in, just like you said, it's not like the old days. They're not leaving it in better condition than they found it. That's just you know what I mean? So I just miss that. I miss the comic book vibe of the 70s and 80s. I just miss that so much. And I can't speak too much on the 90s because I missed a big chunk of the 90s. But, I'm trying to get back and, I don't watch. You make so many damn videos. I can't watch them all. But
I put out a lot.
When it's a 90s thing that I'm interested in, I try to watch it to try to absorb it a little bit so I can,
Yeah. I think the big problem with the industry is that I don't feel like there's not kids who are interested in comics anymore. Us. And
100%.
And once we're gone, who's going to pick up the slack? Like like somebody was just talking. I watched a video recently where a guy was doing a review of Amazing Spider-Man movie by McFarlane, talking about being sold, kind of like you were saying, walking into like a drugstore and there's a spinner rack of all these different comics and all these different stories. It's like a treasure trove of excitement and adventure and imagination. Have so many other things to pick from these days: video games, social media.
And anime and manga. Yeah.
Yeah, manga's doing well.
Yeah. See, that's the thing, though. Manga's doing well. They're doing something right to get the.
Yeah, that's another good counterpoint. Like manga does well.
Yeah. So what's your excuse? You know what I mean? What's the. But you're right. They don't have the young. Like any young. I don't talk to a lot of young people every once in a while. And they don't care about these characters. If they're not in a video game, they don't care about these characters.
A lot of kids, like the Marvel movies, or hate it, have been a big cultural thing. A lot of people know Iron Man. I mean, Iron Man back in the day, I mean, in my opinion, honestly, before Robert Downey Jr. and the movie, Iron Man was like this character, kind of like he was popular, but
Yeah.
he wasn't a tier level character. But now there are kids everywhere in Iron Man costumes and video games, you know the character, but it's because of the movies. They don't care about the comics.
They don't care about the comic books.
Yeah. And like,
you know, about Iron Man, if you were into the Marvel Universe, Iron Man was one of the henchpins of the Marvel Universe. You know, he bankrolled the Avengers back in the 70s. They didn't know he was Tony Stark. I always loved that part. The Avengers, there was only 2 Avengers in the 70s that knew he was Tony Stark.
Yeah.
Captain America had an idea. Not even Captain America knew he was Tony Stark when he was in the Avengers. You can read it. Thor knew. Thor knew he was Tony Stark, but he was, and I think Black Panther knew. I think T'Challa knew that he was Tony Stark. I could be wrong about that. Don't quote me on that one. But none of the other Avengers knew, and I always loved that. But Iron Man was kind of a big deal, but you had to be an insider to know who Iron Man was. The average person had no idea who Iron Man was.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? They knew Spider-Man. They knew Hulk because a lot of people knew Hulk because of the 78 TV show with Bill Bixby, which I loved. I was there every Friday night. But they all, you know, Spider-Man was the big thing. Even the Fantastic Four weren't that mainstream. Everybody that read Marvel knew who the Fantastic Four were. Big. You know, I remember having discussions with my friends walking home from school in middle school. I said, someday they're going to have all this stuff as movies. And, you're crazy. Yeah, Superman. They would even make a Batman movie. You know, we're talking early 80s here. You know, there's no way they can do a Spider-Man movie. I said, someday in the future, they're going to be able to, and everybody's going to know these characters. But unfortunately, like you said, it's not from the comic books.
Yeah.
You would think the comic books would be going gangbusters since the movies, you know what I mean? But it just doesn't work that way with the new.
All the professionals, from what I see, they say that the movies don't move the needle on the sales of the books. And that's really unfortunate, you know.
Only to like a collector where they're going to get, okay, Galactus is going to have an appearance now. I'm going to go out and buy the first appearance of Galactus. That's going to cost you a pretty penny. And then the streaming shows, they'll run and get Moon Knight, and people got burnt on that stuff because that show did not really take off.
No.
It's the same with, you know, Madam Web. Why would you make a Madam Web movie in the first place? But and Kraven the Hunter, really? You're making these kind of movies? So I don't know. I have a love-hate relationship with the movies. I like them, don't get me wrong, but I would like to see them done like the comic books, because the comic books is what I care about.
Right.
If I never had a superhero movie, I'm like, if you're going to do a Dark Phoenix, do it like word for word, like Claremont and Byrne and Terry Austin did in 1980. Do that. and
Yeah.
they're going to make a killing, but it's Hollywood, man,
They screwed up the Dark Phoenix saga twice. That requires, in my mind, like at least 3 movies to introduce and build up, and you can't just do it in one story. You have to know Jean Grey.
Oh, there's no way you can do that in 90 minutes. Are you crazy?
To the team, why she gets those superpowers, the Phoenix, how she's a good guy, and then how she gets manipulated to be, with the Hellfire Club.
Right. Mastermind, all that stuff. Right.
And then have the horrible things happens that she does, then have the powers blocked, and have the X-Men defending her, and then she has to die. Story that would be brilliant if they did it right. They screwed it up twice.
And Rob, I was there buying those off the spinner rack, and I couldn't wait till that next month. And I'm a 10, 11-year-old kid.
Yeah.
So if here's another problem, and I didn't mean to make this about all the problems, you know what I mean? But you knew we were going to go there at some point. There's no plot threads like that anymore. When I was a kid, I loved those. I couldn't wait to get back to the grocery store. Mom, you go to the grocery store? You go to the grocery store? Why do you care about the grocery store? I got to see what happens in X-Men.
Right. Yeah.
You don't have that anymore. All they do is a number one.
Yep.
They do a number one for the collectors to try to make the money and put 1 million covers and 1 million gimmicks, and then there's no threads unraveling. See, one thing I plan on my comic book, if I can ever get 5 or 6 issues, I've got a plot thread already lined up, like multiple, 2 or 3. That's why I love Jim Shooter writing comic books.
Right.
I love Chris Claremont writing comic books, Lynn Wein, all those guys, classic guys, that they knew how to pull on a plot thread, and just Claremont was a master at it.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't read them in their original run.
Right. No, you don't have to, but,
I got to read the classic X-Men's that were the reprints.
Yeah.
And so I got to read it on a monthly basis, not knowing what was going to happen. So in a way, I got to experience real time.
Right.
Again, a monthly basis. I didn't pick up a graphic novel and read it in one sitting. It got doled out. And I see these classic X-Men books right next to my table, my drawing table. Like, here's my drawing table.
Yeah.
And right here next to it, I keep those because they're so good.
They are so good. And I remember when I first started reading the X-Men in 1978, going to that spinner rack. It might have been late 77. I don't know. My mom had bought me maybe 30 comics off the spinner rack before I read an X-Men book. But that Sauron Savage Land and that tussle they had with Magneto, and then it turned into this. And then I went 1 year. I mean, you're talking 12 issues this thing went on. This whole scope of this story. That's a whole actual year, because it was bi-monthly and it just went monthly. A year, when you're an 11-year-old kid, 10-year-old kid, a year is like an eternity.
Yeah.
I was obsessed. The only thing that competed with it was Star Wars at the time coming out, because you didn't know if you were going to get a new movie ever. Right. Maybe Empire Strikes Back might be the last movie. So this was how my mom and sister loved soap operas. I grew up watching soap operas because they dominated the household, because they love the soap operas.
Right.
But this was I explained to my mom, this is my soap opera, Mom. This is my General Hospital. This is all my children right here. Me going and getting this. And she goes, okay, I understand. And you can say adamantium. You're a 9-year-old kid and you can read the word adamantium. So it's doing something for you, because your grades aren't there. But, I said, I don't care about that,
Yeah, I try to do the same thing with my kids. My youngest boy turned 10 in 3 days, and my oldest boy turned 13 in like 4 months. And every time I see them latch on to something that they love, try to like mention and like encourage it, even though it's not the shit I wish they would. I wish they were interested in comics like this.
Of course, but you can't control that, right?
Got their own interest. Like my youngest son in the last year suddenly got really interested in like ocean liner, like pirate ships,
Right.
and boats. And he's telling me, Dad, this is a sloop, and it was built in 18. I'm like, you're so smart, So like,
right.
Show you
there you go.
Want to encourage their likes, the way that.
And you can't like throw it on them, like go out and buy them every single pirate thing, because that's kind of, you got to let it go, kind of evolve organically a little bit. It's got to be his idea.
Right.
Once they think that it's your idea, it's done. They're just gonna, it's over. It rebels. So you can't like push these comic books. I've given my comic book to, there's like 3 women at work that I work with that I've given their grandson or their sons, and they're like 10, like your kids' ages.
Sure.
My comic book, they loved it. They were like, oh, they thought your comic book was so cool. I was like, man, I didn't really start out thinking that my audience was going to be a 12-year-old, but maybe that's my writing. That's kind of where the writing falls. So,
as a kid, I loved stuff that, to my childhood mind, was perceived to be really like adult stuff, not adult like appropriate, but like grown-up storytelling where there's like drama and violence and death and things like that. That I like that stuff. I didn't,
I liked it as well, but I also liked it balanced with some silliness.
Sure, of course.
Some over-the-top stuff. Like that's one reason why I like your Masters In, because it's silly characters, Trapjaw, but it's taken serious in its own context. And that's kind of the goal I have for my silly characters, that eventually they're dead serious. What's going on is going to escalate in like the conflict, and the payoff is going to escalate a little bit on the words escaping me, but the stakes, the stakes are going to be raised, even though the characters are kind of silly, over the top. They're animal based, alien, cybernetic characters with silly names, but it's going to get more serious as it goes on. Like the stakes are going to go higher. So that was kind of the plan I had for the whole thing. Yeah, the guy that did the back cover, his name is Ezekiel Rubiola, and he knocked that out in like 2 days, 2 or 3. And at first, I got the same reaction, like, you want me to try, what are these characters? But he goes, okay. And I showed him a picture of a Rob Liefeld homage that I drew of I kind of traced digitally Rob Liefeld picture, and I got the idea from you. Okay, I know you didn't trace, but I don't have your skill. So I took that picture and I said, I'm just gonna put the lion character coming at you. That was Grizzly from X-Force. I took an X-Force comic book panel where they're busting through a wall.
Yeah.
And I forget what the other characters are. My lion guy, his name is Sightmane. He's coming straight through, and that was Grizzly in the picture. The rest I can't remember. But I said, and I even told the guy, this is kind of like a takeoff of Liefeld's. He's like, I'm not even sure he knew who that was. I mean, he knows that. Yeah, but I could tell he was like, I don't care. Just give me the money and I'll draw the thing. You know what I mean? But he was a nice guy. But I loved it. I was like, ooh, that's kind of cool. Yeah, I might hit him up. It's kind of different, So, but yeah, that's from now he changed it. My original concept that I gave him looked much more like that Liefeld panel. I forget what issue it's from, but and the only character I remember is Grizzly.
Right.
You know, and he, you know, so
How
so
there.
Do what?
How about that character right there?
Oh yeah, Annie Croakley. Yeah,
Annie Croakley, dude. It's so great.
I live like 100 yards from the National Annie Oakley Museum. I walk by it when I go on my walks. I walk by it every day. I was out one summer day. I was out. I don't know. It's about a year and a half ago, and I was walking, and I was trying to come up with my characters. And the first one that I came up with was the reptile guy. Right. I said I'm gonna put an armor on him and everything like that. And then I said Annie Oakley, and I said, yeah, I'm gonna make that a toad. I'm gonna make her a frog, and I'm gonna call her Annie Croakley. It just popped into my head, and I was like, God, that is so silly. They're gonna laugh me off the block. But I said, you know what? I'm gonna put it in there. I don't care.
I love.
And then I wanted a Jean Grey type character, like a phoenix. So I made the one with the bat wings, you know, Siphon, you know. You got to have a Jean Grey type Scarlet. The Scarlet Witch in the 70s, late 70s, mid to late 70s was my favorite Avenger character. And people are like, really? You like I love the way George Perez and John Byrne did the Scarlet Witch. You could tell they loved that character when they drew that character. Right. Go back and read Avengers from 1976 to 1979, 1980, when they do the Chthon and kind of like the dark phoenix of Scarlet Witch when she gets possessed. There is so much. You can tell that both Byrne and Perez, my two all-time favorite comic book artists, they love that character. So I was like, I got to make a Scarlet Witch type character, and that was my inspiration for that character, Siphon. I had another name for it originally. I figured it wasn't. I can't even remember what it is now, but that was my inspiration for that character. So you know, I'm a copycat, dude.
Fair. A lot of ideas can just start like I like this thing, so I want to do something similar to it. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, people they swipe stuff all the time, but I'm just a hack anyway. I'm just a normal dude that wanted to.
You made a book. And then you let me cover and Chuck Inc. Chuck Gibson did the ink on it, so you made a book. You got that variant, the actual regular one. Weren't you saying that you kind of wanted it to have like a Saturday morning cartoon kind of feel?
Yeah, that was 100% the goal. When I wanted something that looked kind of like I've been watching a lot of the reruns of the old Thundar the Barbarian. I love Thundar the Barbarian. Now that doesn't look like anything like Thundar the Barbarian, but I want the planet Earth to be destroyed idea. That's Thundar the Barbarian. I love the Silverhawks, even though it's silly beyond. The villains are silly. The mob, you got Hardware and Windhammer and all those guys. Those over the top silly Thundercats, Silverhawks. I wanted it not just to kind of look like it. I wanted it to have that vibe. And somebody in your Discord mentioned that they didn't like the bigger font. That was an actual decision I made to make a bigger font. Now that might go to kids. Kids might like that bigger font. Now, serious comic book readers like yourself are going to look at that and go, oh boy, that's not professional looking at all. I did that on purpose though, because I originally lettered like 5 pages on the normal font size. I think 9 pixel or something like that is the recommended. I forget exactly. But I bumped it up to like 12. I said, nah, I'm going to do bigger. I don't care. I just want it to look different. I want it to look different, and I did that.
Yeah, well, if it's a conscious decision, like...
Yeah.
something.
It might be the wrong one, but it was my decision to do that. It wasn't a mistake that I made it bigger.
That works out,
Yeah.
I was noticing. I like at the end. One, you've got a pinup from Courtney, who we know from the channel and Discord. But I like your little text you put there, dedicated to the memory of your mother. That always gets me. I'm like, I throw in something like that.
And she probably smacked me for putting that much money into, like, you paid how much an artist for this? But I'm just saying, I always told her that I always appreciated when she bought my comic books, and we always went back and forth. That woman went out of her way to make me happy. She took me to old Godzilla movies in the late '70s, and she sat through that crap, double features of the old Toho ones, and the look on her face. Like one day we were sitting in the theater, and she left and went out to the car and read a book. She was reading her book in the car because she's like, David, I can't watch this. There's like 4 people in the theater, and I'm sitting there jumping up and down, loving it. I'm like 8 years old at this point.
Yeah.
Because it's a year or two before they come to the United States from Japan. They always name it differently, but I was Godzilla obsessed with those movies, and I made her take me to every single one. She'd always try to hide the movie section of the newspaper when she saw, like, oh God, a new Godzilla movie. Oh no, because she hated that stuff. But she went out of her way to try to please me with comic books and stuff like that. So it's sad she didn't get to see my comic book. Not that it's that big a deal, but because she passed away like 3 months before it it came out. So that was the idea. Originally, I wasn't gonna. That picture I didn't make to do that. I was going to hire her because I saw you do pinups. I'm copying off of you. I saw you do pinups, but you have more artist friends than I do. And I have a limited amount of money. And you have more influence, so you can say, hey, man, get in my comic book. To me, I'm going to have to break my checkbook out. So I hired her to do that one picture. And she nailed it. I was like, oh, I love it, Yeah. So I said, that'd be a good picture to put a little dedication to my mother there. So that's what I did. That was my thought.
Yeah, that pinup. Yeah, I love that too.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing it up. Yeah, it's just because she nailed it as kind of my character, sitting there reflecting. So I was like, you know what, that'd be a good picture to put that little dedication there. So
I think,
and I knew it'd make my sister happy if I did that because I sent a copy to my older sister. I have a sister that's 7 years older than me, and she loved that because her and my mom were like this.
Right.
I wasn't all that close to my mom. I was, but my mom and I didn't see eye to eye on stuff. She didn't. She was wishing I was a girl when I was born. Oh God, I got this brat. So I knew I did that for my sister as much as I did, because I know she would appreciate that,
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, I'll make sure to, when this thing goes up, we'll have, I can have to where people can your stuff and hit you up and get copies of it. Like, that's what we're, one of the big things, people to get it in some people's hands. So we'll get that connected to you. You got anything about shout out? Anything you want to say about it or shout out about or the work or what you're doing or where people can find it?
I've got it on Indiegogo right now. I'm going to put it up on Fund My Comic eventually and just have it like a storefront where people can, and I might even lower the price a little bit. I eventually wanted to do a foil cover, but I might wait for issue 2 to do a foil cover.
Right.
I didn't do this to make money. You know what I mean? Yeah, sure. I've had like 5 or 6 people back it on there. I knew I wasn't going to make any money on this. I'm not trying to downplay it and say, oh, well, you don't seem to care. I do care, but I'm not looking to make money. If you want to pick up a copy or you want me to send you a copy or whatever, hit me up. I sent a few people. My supervisor at work, he put $50 down on it. I was like, you didn't have to do that, and I sent him a couple. I gave him a couple copies, but he was like, no, I appreciate the effort. So I just wanted to make a comic book. And I plan on doing an issue too. When it's going to be completed, I don't know, but I do plan on trying to get the issue too. And I'm not trying to pimp it that much. I'm not like pushing it. I am going to put it on Fund My Comic and just have it as a storefront. Yeah. And if people want to, I'm supposed to go on June 8th. I'm supposed to be in Dayton, Ohio, and have my own little booth. And I got to thinking, I booked it, but I didn't pay for it yet. And I got to thinking, man, I'm taking a spot from somebody that actually does this stuff for a living. You know what I mean? Like, they're trying to make it. I'm just a guy that wanted to make a comic book. So I do have it in 2 comic book stores right now. Yeah. They've got it displayed, and they made me sign it in front of some people. It's so embarrassing, dude. I'm like, oh, God. I've never signed a comic book. I'm the writer, creator. I'm not the artist. You might have the artist sign it. He's the one with the talent.
Without you, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but he's the one with the talent. You know what I mean? So I was like, he's in Brazil. He can't sign it, but he can't show up. But I feel weird not having the artist there. If he was coming, I would get the booth and all that. But it's weird, like, oh, are you the artist? Oh, draw me a commission. Oh, but nobody's going to, I'd be like, I can't draw that. I can draw my version of it, but, do you have 2 weeks? Yeah. But, you know what I'm saying?
I don't to say go. I mean, people want to see these things, and you've got a book. You made it happen. So,
I mean, the table's only $35. It's not a money issue. It's do I really want to do this issue? Like, am I just going to sit there and be embarrassed, or you know what I mean? If I was a talented artist, I would go and I made this book. I'd go to Heartbeat. I'd be pimping it. I just feel dirty that I'm just the writer and not, you know what I mean? I guess you can't relate, but I don't know. I have that in my head. But I'll probably end up going if they still have the spot open.
Writer, you're the guy who funded it,
Yeah, but I feel like I'm dirty. Like I just opened my wallet and here you go. And you know what I mean? It feels like everything I hate about comic books. Ironically enough, like Marvel just opens their wallet and commercializes something. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. Maybe I'm just being silly. Edit this part out. No, I'm just kidding. I'm joking.
Comic, you willed it into reality. It is yours, and that's why I wanted to, get you on here and process creativity and fun and the joys of making our own stuff.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, and they did a great job on the quality of the glossy. I wanted it glossy. I wanted it thick paper, glossy. One of my friends that I sent it to, he loved your cover. He was like, "Oh, that looks old school," and it does. It feels good in the hand. I must admit, I'll open it up and just feel it, and I was like, "Oh, that's my comic book. It feels really nice," and I'm glad I went with the glossy because normally I don't like that. Normally I'm more of a pulp, the old style pulp. I'm old school, right. But I didn't think that would look right. That style, that animation type looking style would look right on the newspaper print type paper, which you have the option of kind of doing. But I wanted the thick cover and the glossiness. So anyway,
it works. It looks great, and you're right.
I appreciate it.
It feels substantial and it feels good. For
a 36-page comic book, it felt. I was like, God damn. He's doing 90 pages. Here I am, 36, 120 pages. His book is like a graphic novel, and mine's going to feel like this little wimpy noodle. And then when I got it, I was like, oh, wow. substantial in my hand. And it's just silly things I think of, man. You
We
know,
have the same thing. You make it, and then once you finally get that package, you're holding it in your hands, and you're like, I finally, the end game is to hold
it was great.
it. Yeah.
But you know what? After I got it, I was like, okay. The process was the joy.
Yeah.
It turns out I like the stress and the chaos. I kind of feed off of that, and the process and the stress of getting it done through a little bit of diversity, going on, or not diversity, adversity. Said the wrong word there. I got diversity on the brain, I guess. But through the hurdles and the roadblocks that I had financially, because I didn't know I was going to have a tornado hit my house while this was going on. So it's just once I got the book in the mail, after the first day or two, I hate to say that, but the excitement kind of was like, okay, I got to make an issue 2 now.
That's
what I mean.
To go on to the next one. It's time to
for the next one. Yeah, exactly. But the making it is the joy. If you don't find joy in making it, you shouldn't be trying to do a comic book.
Oh yeah.
You can talk about it, but if you're stressed about it and it's anxiety, don't do it. I'm just saying, don't do it.
You got to make them because you love it.
You got to, yeah, exactly. So that's obvious when you were powering through trying to get yours done, 100 pages, and you were like, oh, this is stressing me, but I got to get it done before that one show in Utah that you were going to. I remember you were saying, oh, you sounded kind of like a breakdown one day, like you were having a breakdown a little bit. And I was like, dude, your shit is good, man. Next time, take your time and don't worry about any deadlines and do your own thing. Take your time with it.
I wanted to prove to myself, because the one I was working on that you're talking about was the final volume, and I wanted to hit that deadline to prove to myself. I did it, and I was burned out. I was very tired.
Oh yeah, big time.
Almost producing a page a day.
I couldn't imagine having to draw that.
That's the drawing end of it, not the lettering or the editing or the cleanup. But as far as physically creating the original art, I was basically a page a day for a good stretch.
That's some Jack Kirby. That's Jack Kirby shit. And here's the difference: you don't do it for a living.
No.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's even more impressive. Yeah, you do a page a day in your spare time.
Yeah.
If Jack Kirby had a limited window, there ain't no way he's doing 4 or 5 pages a day for Marvel. You know what I mean? So, you're kind of the Jack Kirby of the independent comic books as far as the work.
80 for a minute, I was doing it. I'm definitely taking this new one that I'm doing a little slower. I'm not
right
myself out, and I'm enjoying the process. So
there you go. That's what counts. So yeah.
Well, maybe that's a good point to kind of wrap it up.
Don't get me started. I can go on all day. I mean, don't get me started. You got to cut me off, man.
It's easy to chat, especially with somebody's got similar interests. Like we can talk forever, but
oh, dude.
Yeah. This was fun. So I'll get this up, shortly. I gotta save it and do a little work on it to put together. But we'll get this out there and have the video work out for people to see on my channel.
Oh, great, man. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you being a big supporter. You've been very positive and helpful. And you gave me the opportunity to draw. I've never done any of these characters before. And
I love it. And Chuck Gibson, I think the very first time I mentioned him, I called him Chuck Dixon online one time, and that's the Bane creator. You know what I mean? The guy that created Bane. I was like, no, that's Chuck Gibson, not Chuck Dixon. But yeah, Chuck Gibson, man. Just the fact that he did it, I was so happy.
Yeah.
I was like, take my money. I was more than happy that he even cared enough to do a page. I was happy.
Yeah, we've been finding really a good way for us to sync up with our work, and just looking at stuff we created, we're
Awesome. And
mutually.
as you can see, I made a T-shirt. The T-shirts didn't turn out that great. This T-shirt, in my opinion, turned out a lot better. That one was very hard to make.
Yeah.
I had to send them in a design, and it was this one I could cut out more the image.
Yeah.
But that one was.
And people were like, "Dude, what's that from?" I'm like, "Well, let me tell you."
That's my. You're like, yeah, I do that. So no, I appreciate you. I appreciate the time you took. You were. I could tell you were like, do I really want to do this? You know what I mean? Because I don't blame you. People don't like to draw other people's stuff. It's that simple. Unless it's your idea. You know what I mean? And I get it. I 100% get it. That's why I never pushed you or said, dude, you can back out of this. You don't have to do this stuff. You don't want to.
Because I wanted to do something that was different than I've ever done before.
Right.
And I was about
push yourself a little bit. Yeah.
to go, let me grab the original, but then I forgot I sent it to you. You have it. Right.
That's true.
I had a lot
anyway.
So I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Well, I guess we'll just call it quits here for now.
All right.
We'll, get this up on the channel and people can see your work. And that's the important thing for me, is to show people these independent works. I want people to see them. And
if you ever do go through the book on your channel, like you do the other ones, feel free to give your honest opinion.
Oh,
you don't owe me anything. You know what I mean?
It'll get on the channel.
And hey, feel free to criticize. Feel free to tell me what you actually think. But you know what I mean. But be a little gentle. But I'm a sensitive guy. But this isn't my livelihood. This isn't my nothing. Nothing in my life is tied to except the joy of doing it. That's it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So anyway, I'll shut up now.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. And
I appreciate the time, man.
We'll catch up later.
Okay.
Man, see you later.
Okay.